Welcome everyone to the Layer5 community meeting. Today is 24th of September. We have a couple of topics to discuss today, and we also have a demo from Jared on the Nginx service mesh. The link to the meeting minutes is in the chat. Please add your names as well as any topics that you might have to discuss here. Like every other Layer5 meeting, this meeting is also recorded and will be made public on YouTube. We also had a couple of newcomers join us this week, but I don't think anyone is joining us on this call today. If they join in between, then let's meet them. With that, let's get on to the first agenda item. So yesterday we kicked off a new meeting in Layer5 community, which is Meshery build and release meeting. So we kind of restructured the CI meeting. I think I had the wrong link. So we kind of restructured the CI meeting to make it so that we track Meshery's release readiness. So what we did yesterday was we went through this Meshery test plan. So this is basically some nearly 300 tests, user flows that a person using Meshery might follow. So what we are trying to do here is to test out these user flows manually at first to ensure UX correctness and other more human focusing things. So we had people sign up to test some of these or sign up to test a particular category or a test group. And what we are doing now is to have the next release, the v0.6 release by next week. So probably by October 1st. And yeah, there are still some empty columns in this test plan. So it's open for anyone to sign their names up and start testing it. So a couple of considerations to testing is on some of these actions. We have an expected outcome, and we might also have some testing guidelines. So please try to go through that as well. And we also test this across multiple operating systems and across multiple platforms and across multiple service meshes. So some of these actions service meshes, some of these actions are specific to a certain platform. I mean, certain platform where Meshery is deployed. So this is still open. So if you are interested, please sign up. If you are interested in testing it out, we could use a lot of feedback in the user experience, especially. And yeah, we are also another goal of the meeting was to also take initiative in automating some of these tests. So some of the folks in the community, like Piyush, have been trying to bring more unit tests and integration tests into Meshery. He has especially taken Meshery CTL and almost and is working on automating most of it. So our another goal for not this release, but in the upcoming releases would be to automate some of these tests, use that runs on our CI/CD pipelines, and yeah, like to be more systematic with this. the reason why we are doing this manually right now is to ensure UX consistency. So since that can't be automated, we have to do it manually. So Meshery also has a couple of GitHub actions. Meshery integrates with service mesh performance and SMI conformance to specifications, and Meshery has a GitHub action to use both of these specs. So these specs will also be used when we create integration test. All right. As I mentioned before, the next release target is on October 1st. So we are trying to do trying to make sure that we are ready for the release before that. And there are also a couple of open issues which I will share in chat after this, that we need to focus more on before the release. So yep, that is it. So the call to action here is to go through the test plan, and if you are interested, sign yourself up to test some of these and give us feedback. Anyone else like to add anything more to this?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I have a question. Which version of Kubernetes should we use in, or versions should we use in testing that?
I don't have an answer, but Lee mentions 1.16, a version above 1.16. But do we have a concrete like compatibility test done?
We have in the past, probably a year ago, we'd gone through and verified a couple of versions of Kubernetes. And then since then, there is like the lack of automated testing makes that extremely tough to keep up with, especially between the various flavors of Kubernetes, the managed services, and then the distributions. So through automated testing, we really need to get there. Some of the folks that are on this call have pointed out incompatibility between Meshery's manifests and Meshery's Helm charts with Kubernetes 1.22 because of some deprecation of APIs in Kubernetes 1.22. Those issues have been addressed. So Meshery is now compatible with 1.22. But then, yeah, we're just for like the project itself is for lack of tooling really around like being able to speak to that very well. So Meshery as a project has been going on for for some, be coming up on a couple of years here. And so it's been a couple of years old of keeping track with Kubernetes versions. Yeah, that isn't.
Yeah. No, I understand that completely. But like when I was running the last things I was trying to test out, I was using 1.14 and it doesn't work. And then you think, okay, 1.22, it doesn't work either. And you find, not even a sort of like a pragmatic hint as what people use. So, one possibility could be that whoever tests that we add an extra column in this document and just notes down the version this person used to test it. Then we have a hint as what.
Totally, works. That's a great suggestion. It is also curious that it makes sense now that there have been some changes to support 1.22. I don't think that like backwards compatibility with versions prior to 1.16. So like the 1.14 issue that you were experiencing, that kind of makes some sense. But then if you were bumping into things on 122, some of those fixes were very recent. So that you might have been.
Yeah, I think, and 122 makes sense as well, because a lot of us deprecated in when was it deprecated? 122, or removed actually, right? And then of course you also have dependencies to like, you know, the manifests that like, you know, Istio is using. So where we actually have, you know, it's not our fault if it doesn't work, and we're depending on that as well. So I think it would just be a good hint, you know, so that I can refer to, yeah, we actually have tested, you know, some of it with 121, some of it with 120. And I think that will be just good information.
To your point, like the same goes for Linux, Windows, and Mac to be listing out, you know, what OS version.
Yeah.
Totally.
Cool.
So Navendu, I don't know if you'd said, but the release target is about a week away from today. So ideally this next Friday would be the V060. I'm sure, so as a project, as we go to get more mature with the processes here, and begin to have meetings that aren't just about building, but are also about releasing, which is what Navendu was talking about yesterday's meeting, that we've got 5 more point releases to go before that gets really, you know, hardened. But there are, that said, that doesn't mean that Meshery shouldn't be bug free, or that it shouldn't be usable in production prior to then. There would be certain, like, existing features should be of that high quality. So we shouldn't, it's not like we should wait to get automation in place. As a matter of fact, there's a couple of GitHub actions that are specific to Meshery that will run performance tests, or that will run conformance tests. And both of those actions are, you know, those invoke and implicate quite a bit of Meshery's code. The Cypress functional, or the Cypress integration tests that go on as well, those can indirectly invoke quite a bit of code. And so just going out and scheduling the GitHub actions will be massively helpful. And actually, to Michael's point, scheduling those actions 3 times with a couple of different Kubernetes versions, for example, not a lot of effort. So, yeah. And so those things were discussed on yesterday's call as well. And that's good. But I was telling some other people yesterday, there are people from other well-known technology companies. So Jared's on the call today from Nginx, which is great. Jared's been trying to work through some Meshery bugs. So we want Jared to have a good experience as he wants to, as he begins to take pride in his work here as well, he wants to make sure that everyone else has a good experience, I'm sure. But there were Intel engineers this week, Google engineers, Cisco engineers, and a Red Hat engineer, all of which had messaged privately asking, and actually a principal architect from Charter, the service provider in the US, like, hey, can you give examples of where people are running Meshery? It's like, oof. Good, or like, so we're hitting the tipping point. I don't know that Meshery itself has, like, where I would say Meshery itself doesn't have product market fit. Like, it hasn't seen a hockey stick of users coming through. That's coming. And from a quality perspective, we really need to be ready for it collectively. Cool. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. So good. So hopefully we need to get a release out before KubeCon. That's in part, like, we'll do it, you know, unabashedly, we'll do conference-driven development. And it's as good of a milepost as any to use. But there are a number of things that have been accomplished between the .5.0 release and now. And yeah, and they need to be touted. You know, a lot of you have, yeah, anyway, Anyway, good. Yeah, good. So we need to release out in the next, ideally a week. We can make subsequent releases as well. We will. We've made 58 of them since we made the .50 release. So cool. Next up is, speaking of Jared, his ears are burning. So Mr. Byers is with us today. He had kindly accepted a request to tell us about Nginx Service Mesh. Most of us have not gotten our hands on it. Some of us have seen some of the neat features it has, the ways in which it treats SMI, Service Mesh Interface APIs as first class, as its first class API, how it uses other ecosystem projects, Spire and Jaeger, and I won't steal all of Jared's thunder, but Jared, welcome. Thanks for being on again on the call, and take it away. Like, to tell us about NSM.
Thanks, Lee. Yeah, so I do get a bit nervous with demos, so hopefully this goes well.
We'll edit the recording.
There we go. Oh, I can. Mind if I share my screen? Or?
Please, yeah, just bump.
All right. Cool. All right. Hopefully that's big enough. Sorry if it's a bit dry. I tend to work mostly in the command line. I've been meaning to get a fancy demo app with a nice UI and everything, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So you'll bear with me here. Yeah, so I'm sure most of you are familiar with the concept of service mesh. Working at with a product that's mesh free is with mesh is the root word there, and working with closely with the SMI, with the conformance tests and all that. I'm sure everyone's aware of that. So thought I would just dive in and show just some of the basic use cases of how people might use a service mesh in the real world using Nginx Service Mesh. So I have a couple apps running. Oh, yeah, there we go. So have my app here, the pod, which is think of it as a front end, and then that will make some calls to our back end here. So so this call went from our front end here, my app, to the back end, which my app is really just a friendly name for a bash container where I'm running curl just to simplify the mechanics there, so that it's easy to test different things on the fly. So right now we're making a call and we're reaching our backend V1, no problem. And so if customers have apps already deployed, we don't want to go in and make them redo everything when they install a mesh. So we let people actually keep their existing, well, they will have to re-roll, but they won't have to remove and redeploy anything. So I'm gonna install Nginx Service Mesh with Helm here. We have our Helm repo already set up. We do create a namespace. Nginx does require a dedicated namespace to work in, so you can't deploy in default. Otherwise, you'll get conflicts there if other things get deployed or are already deployed. Telling Helm here to create that namespace. And then this is just an extra flag. So security conscious users, they might want to set this flag to automatically block all communication between services. And so they have to explicitly allow requests between services within their cluster. So I'm setting this to automatically block all those connections. And then just to wait to make sure that all of the pods go up. So this does take a couple minutes. So while that's running, let's see. So this error here, or warning rather, is expected for now. As Lee said, we do depend on Spire for our identity management for pods and services within the cluster. We had to keep using an older API for now due to a dependency on that. That one should be fixed in our next release, so the warning will go away. But it doesn't have any effect right now. It's just a visual warning, unless you're on Kubernetes 122. That is a problem. In our next release, we will have 122 support, but right now we're just kind of restricted to 121 and earlier. So that's going. As I mentioned, here's the deployment for the app that I'm running. Essentially, it's just I just built a custom container for Bash that already includes tools like curl in there. And then the back end is actually Nginx with a very simple Nginx conf here. We're just returning 200 and this text, just running on port 80, very simple. Pulling the Nginx image here, and then it has its relevant service. All right, so let's see. Looks like it deployed. Yeah, so we by default we go ahead and include a few common tools just so that it's easy for users to get in and get started without having to deploy anything extra. Of course, in a production environment, the expectation is that people will not use these included services. Actually, you'll set a flag to not deploy these. You will use your own Grafana and Jaeger or Zipkin or whatever tracing service you need there. Same thing with Prometheus. It's just convenience to help people get up and running and see what we're about. We have our control plane here, something for metrics, and then the Spire services here. So let's go ahead and re-roll our pods.
Jared, is it okay if I interrupt with questions as we go?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, all right, good. Because the problem is I'll forget them.
Yeah, no, I completely understand.
Well, quick. So, by the way, if these aren't things that are on the tip of your tongue, I totally get it. But is the control plane namespace, the Nginx dash mesh namespace, is that configurable or is that set in stone?
No, you can put it in whatever namespace you want. Like I said, the only caveat is that it just has to be dedicated for the mesh. You can name it whatever you want.
Okay, gotcha. Gotcha.
We do have a CLI, which is those who work with us know. Unfortunately, is behind a EULA page. It is free to download. You just have to manually click through a EULA to download the CLI, which is why we weren't able to work with Meshry for a while until this, not the current, but the previous release where we added Helm support. But if you, I kind of lost my train of thought there.
But you can use mesh CTL.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's what I was. Well, thank you. Yeah, so you can just run deploy, and you'll specify your registry server and an image tag in your registry key if you're using a private registry. but that will automatically use the Nginx mesh namespace. By default, with Helm, you have to explicitly specify it, but both options allow you to use a custom one if you wish. Any other questions? Or
yeah, actually, a couple more. As you're going through and you're identifying the fact that Nginx Service Mesh offers people choice around some of these add-ons, the Grafana and Jaeger and Prometheus. So if people already have those tools, they can optionally choose to use their existing deployments with Nginx Service Mesh. In order to configure Nginx Service Mesh to use those existing deployments, is that just configuration? Is that things that they do in values.yaml if they're using Helm or what?
Yes. Yeah, in our docs, we have the configuration options with the list of various things. So again, if you have a private registry, you can set those here. But specific to your question, your Prometheus address. So if you have your own Prometheus server already running, you can just set that either using the set flag in the Helm command or in the YAML file, like mentioned. There's quite a few options here. You can choose whether or not you want to have auto injection enabled or not, or set specific namespaces to have your sidecars or your pods automatically injected with the sidecar. Your tracing backend. So we use Jaeger by default, but you can use Zipkin or Datadog. Yeah, it's up to you. Various types of persistent storage, which we need for Spire to work to store the certs. If you have an upstream authority for your certs, you can set that as well, upstream CA. MTLS, just for convenience, and going back to a lot of these default values are for people who just want to try it out without deploying it into a production environment. So we do deploy with MTLS enabled, but it's just set to permissive. So plain text will go through still. Obviously in production, you would want to have this set to strict. A bunch of options in there. So any other questions?
One thing that's unique, well, yeah, actually, yeah, it is unique to Nginx Service Mesh. Actually, maybe if you could talk about the data plane and the proxy that's used, and
Yeah. So our sidecar is actually a custom build of Nginx Plus that people are free to use. Let's see. So yeah, so we just automatically inject our we have our init container, sets everything up, of course, and then we have the Nginx mesh sidecar, which, like I said, is just Nginx configured to work as our proxy, and we update the conf as needed to yeah, add load balancing or whatever. But to be honest, that part of it, I haven't. There's so many different components, and I haven't had a chance to dive into every little bit of it. So unfortunately, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert on what exactly we can configure with the sidecar. So I've been focused on other aspects of it. Kind of have subject matter experts that work on individual ones. If you want, I could probably set up a demo or a Q&A session with someone who would be more knowledgeable on that if you had more specific questions.
Yeah, that might be kind of interesting. It's one of the one of the really cool things, well, I think one of the really cool things about Nginx Service Mesh is, and it's in part like, well, or correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe part of the slogan, so to speak, for the Nginx Service Mesh is that like the data plane matters. The data plane is, it's the thing that does, you know, a ton of work. It does the heavy lifting. Yeah. And
so you're right. I do feel embarrassed. I don't have more knowledge on that. But like I said, I can definitely reach out and get someone who's a bit more of an expert in that side of things.
but in the meantime, like the exciting thing is, and maybe Jared, you might have said this, but the proxy that's used is you guys brought out the big guns, like it's the Nginx Plus,
Right.
and so that's it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Jared, here's I'll venture one more question toward the proxy, if I may, and that is, so we talk about, there's some goings on in terms of functionality with respect to Meshery and WebAssembly filters, like the extensibility of that data plane. And Nginx, I assume is well known. I mean, I assume is well known for a number of things, but one of those things is, you know, the ability to put in your own filters, not necessarily, or I don't think historically necessarily in terms of WebAssembly, but other, maybe what, Lisp, not, is it Lisp or is it C++? Well, directly, either directly in C or in, I'm missing the word. It's, what's that language? Not Lisp.
Lua.
Lua, yeah. But so the question is like, with respect to WebAssembly, or rather maybe with respect to whether it's WebAssembly or something else, are those filters dynamically insertable, or do they have to be compiled into the image that you're using? Or, you know?
That is, I'm actually writing that down. So I'll have to get back to you on that one, because I'm sorry. That's a little deeper than I've gotten into. No,
yeah, me too. That's why I'm asking.
Right. I clearly need to go back and dive into some of the more core Nginx server aspects. You're wondering how filters are implemented, is that correct?
Yeah, or like, yeah, I guess there's probably three questions in there probably, which is, what types of filters are supported? And by types, I mean written in what languages? B, is WebAssembly one of those, or is there plans toward WebAssembly? And then the third question is, are any of those filters dynamically insertable? Meaning, are they hot loadable and hot unloadable on the fly?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I wrote those down, so I'll find out the answer and get back to you on that.
Cool.
So before actually joining Nginx, I was working in other areas, and so during my time at Nginx, I've just worked on Nginx Service Mesh, and so I don't have a lot of the legacy knowledge about the core product, which is obviously a failing on my part. But so most of my knowledge has been more around Kubernetes and clusters and focusing on SMI and that sort of thing, rather than the Nginx implementation itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean,
Any other questions right now, or?
Not for me.
Okay. All right. So just deploy the mesh and re-roll the sidecar. So I'm going to try and make that request again. see. Nice. And so if you remember, I deployed the mesh with deny enabled by default. And so now these requests are forbidden, which is what we expect if you want a secure cluster and want to really lock down what services can talk to other services. Talking about SMI, I'm gonna deploy a traffic target, which will allow requests from my app service accounts to other services, which are using this backend service account here. And then those familiar with SMI spec will know that you also need an HTTP route group to specify the rules surrounding the types of requests that are allowed so here's so I'm just going to make it so that only GET requests are allowed. We see you can make these a lot more complicated, restricted to specific paths or headers, etc. Try making that request again, and we get our 200. It's going through successfully now. Let's double check that and make sure that that's actually blocking it. So let's try and make a post, and 405 method not allowed is returned. So perfect. So that's our access control working as expected. Another feature is the traffic splitting. That's the HT. So I have my backend version 1 release. I want to make an update to version 2, or a use case would be, for instance, a Canary release for users. If they're wanting to do a Canary release, traffic split will let you do this by sending limited amounts of traffic to these new services. So let's say our current service, we want to send 90% of our traffic there and only 10% to our new service, just to see if there's any issues we can not affect too many users. Let's go ahead and deploy this. We don't have our service 2 out yet, but we're going to go ahead and deploy this for now. And then we also have, actually, let me just not worry about the matches for now. We'll just do a plain traffic split here. All right, so we got that out. So, a few requests here. Yep, just still getting, obviously, V1 because we haven't deployed the others, but traffic's still flowing nicely. Here's our backend V2, and actually how this one's set up, it's going to return a 500. So this will be an example of if you accidentally deploy a broken build. That's what this will demo. Already have our traffic split in place, so we'll run this. So eventually we'll get it. Or not. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Check our traffic split here. Oh, yes. It would seem that always the curse of the demo. Sorry, I went through this before and it worked. I think I must have messed something up. All right. Actually, make it more obvious. Just change this to. So it'll send all traffic to V2. There we go. If you have the CLI installed, you can actually run top, and it will show you the last 30 seconds, just give you a quick check if there's services that are not behaving. So you can see that none of the backend V2 services were successful. All of them failed. You could also check this on Grafana, or if you have other dashboards that are pulling from Prometheus to view this. But it's obvious that our backend V2 isn't working, so we can go back and use traffic split to send everything back to V1.
And Jared, just to clarify, the top command, it is not implementing SMI metrics, or it is?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and it just captures the last 30 seconds. So it's not meant to be an in-depth tool. It's more just kind of a pulse check. How are my services doing?
Nice. Yeah.
Oops, lagging a bit on me. I don't know why it's lagging.
Sure.
Go.
But then Jared, as you like the rate limit and the circuit breaker capability, the CRDs, like those do those, can you, yeah, maybe you can speak to those, but also do those build upon, it looks like they do, like, do they build upon SMI constructs?
Let's see. So this is here. I'm blanking. I don't remember if circuit breaker is actually part of. I mean, it's built on top of the construct, but there's not a SMI API for circuit breaker, correct?
Right.
So yeah, we're just building on top of that, trying to have a sense of consistency.
Sure.
But obviously, it is it's not an official CRD, and that circuit breaker is a bit harder to demo because you have to have a fallback, and it's hard to visualize because what circuit breaker does is if you have a service that's failing and you have a fallback defined, you always hit that fallback. Circuit breaker works behind the scenes to actually it'll prevent the failing service from being called for however long you say. So for instance, here it's 10 seconds. So it just speeds up requests by not going to a failed service first and then redirecting to fallback. It just short circuits and goes directly to fallback. But it's, like I said, it's hard to visualize because that all happens behind the scenes. But yeah, that's the circuit breaker. Regarding a rate limit, this is another one that would be if you're maybe trying to secure an API endpoint or something, you don't want it to be hammered too often. You can set up a rate limit. So this one here, let's say this one is a really slow rate limit of only 4 requests per minute, and that's easier to show manually. Yeah, so I made the request too quickly, and so now it's returned in this 503 temporarily unavailable. And then in about 15 seconds, you should be able to make another successful request. So what the rate does is it doesn't split it up into 4 rapid requests per minute. It actually divides up the unit of time by the request. So 4 requests per minute is actually 1 every 15 seconds. So that's it. I've taken up a lot more time than I was planning on. Apologies for kind of the wandering around a bit, but hopefully it was somewhat informative. Is there any questions? No. Oh, I haven't been looking at the chat. Sorry. I don't know if there's questions in here.
You've been getting harassed, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay.
in the best. And yeah, Jared, this is cool. I mean, like, there's some things that that Jared is pointing out that some of you may not realize are, fairly special. He pointed out a few already about Nginx Plus being the proxy of the data plane, which that's really neat. I mean, hey, there's only one service mesh in the world. Yeah, let me take that back for a moment. But so there's only one service mesh in the world promoting use of Nginx Plus. Actually, that's true. There's only one in the world that does that. There have been other service meshes that have used Nginx as their data plane, not Nginx Plus, which is pretty neat. The other thing that you only see like 1 or 2 other, it's like 2 other service meshes out there that use SMI, well, maybe 3, but anyway, it's still really special. Like Nginx, Jared, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Nginx service mesh API is SMI's API, other than the 2 rate limit and circuit breaker, those 2 kind of custom definitions. My understanding was, or is, that that's the surface area of NSM's API.
Yes, we implement the SMI Go library for SMI. The HTTP route groups are handled by sorry, I just cannot think this morning. But it's a JS module for Nginx to handle the regex patterns and all that. But yeah, primarily we just depend on the SMI for the APIs.
Nice. Yeah, another pretty cool thing. Nice. Yeah. Anybody else have questions? I can't wait until we get Jared working with, or get Meshry working with Jared's setup. I think Meshry helps with, well, sample apps to show, and helps with the curls that are going on, like run those performance tests, so it can help people familiarize with Nginx service mesh a bit more. Really nice. Also, the SMI conformance, Nginx service mesh is underrepresented on the map, so to speak. Like by rights, I would think, like by rights, by principle, it should be pretty prominently represented in terms of like passing with flying colors. And my hunch is that somewhere between Meshry, the Meshry adapter for Nginx service mesh, just starting to work, consistently, and maybe some later SMI spec versions, I guess. And this isn't a fair question to ask anyone, but I don't know if if the latest SMI spec version, which I think is .6, if that's necessarily support. So anyway, there could be challenges around versioning, but I'd love to see Nginx service mesh like beating everyone else, even open service mesh on there. So that will help spur on others to get their house in order and to pass those tests. So
that's one of my goals. And like you pointed out, we are. I mean, we do have a story to update to the latest API versions, but I think we're trailing a version or two behind on some of those. Yeah, I think that's prioritized for this next release, is make sure that we're up to date with all the SMI API versions.
it's cool. Jared, thanks for doing this just kind of off the cuff as well. It's nice. I'm taking away a number of things that I didn't know before. It's just the power of the circuit breakers really is such an intriguing capability of a mesh to go play with it and configure it. And it's hard to tell if you're using those correctly, like how to not abuse them, but how to make sure you're taking advantage of something so smart. Great.
Thanks for putting up with my or letting me practice demoing for you. It looks like Meshry might be a good option from the chat to help step up my demo game.
Those are biased perspectives. I acknowledge that, but yeah, cool, good. Okay. Well, fair enough. The Vendu, we had a couple of other items on. Oh, I guess we're almost at time, so I don't know if there's anything urgent or not.
We have two more items to cover, but if it is not urgent, maybe we can move it. Meghna has had I think a topic on importing patterns and filters that needs to be discussed, I think. Meghna?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it is urgent though. I think we can shift it. It's fine. This is one thing though regarding the release blog. We still have few sections to be covered. Applications, filters, and dynamic management UI. We need people in for that. That is one thing I just wanted to let the members know. So that is one thing. So that is kind of important.
Yep. So Meghna was mentioning about the release blog. So as we discussed earlier on the call, we have a release coming up in 1 week, and we don't have enough blogs to talk about all the cool stuff we are doing here. So if you are interested, there are still a lot of blogs that needs to be written. So there is this open epic that you can check out and sign up on any of these and write a blog. Thanks for pointing that out, Meghna. Nitish, any update on the state management in Meshry?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to share where we are in the implementation of state management proposal. Sorry, the implementation. So currently, I wouldn't take much time. I would make it short. I'll just share my screen right now. So yeah, so if you can see, like, this is a actually you wouldn't be able to make we are not trying to make any difference in the UI as of now. So this is the this is what we have now, that is we have the navbar header and all those stuff complete, and the dashboard page is also complete. But then this particular component, the service mesh, the component for showing data plane and control plane details of a service mesh is not yet it's not yet written. And basically from this point on, we just have to write we just have to keep writing React components and try and keep integrating them with the backend. So actually the backend integrations company, we just have to write React components and hook them up. So as a step towards that, I have actually created a spreadsheet, and some people who are interested in working on that is already working. So if anyone else who is who wants to contribute to this, then they can actually do so. You can actually reach out in Slack or any other platform. That is one thing. And yeah, as of now, I also wanted to discuss about the user flow that any normal user, Mesher user would go through when opening Mesher UI. So there are some things that needs to be discussed, and which is not yet concrete, but yeah, I'm just telling it loud. So one of those is that basically, like when you start Meshery, like we have to hydrate our local state with the server cache. So that is one thing that has to be taken care of. And right now, the way we are doing it is that we are actually dispatching multiple actions that would yeah, if I could show you again, like I'll just refresh the page. And this is a development tool written by Redux people, which helps us visualize the actions and action that Redux dispatches and all those stuff, which is helpful for developers to visualize. So we can see that multiple actions are getting dispatched, and based on those, these data are getting filled from the server and they're updating. So my hunch is that we ideally we should not have to dispatch multiple actions. We should have a single endpoint which would give us the data that is necessary for the user to see the details when he logs into Meshery first time. So ideally, this should like in the future, this would be a single action which would be called initialize or hydrate server state or something that would do all the job that it is actually doing right now. But some of the actions will be specific to the particular page or particular component. Those will have to be separated out, and those have to be handled differently. Yeah, and other than that, what else? Okay. So yeah, I don't think there is anything. Okay, one more thing is that we have to find a way to deal with the subscriptions. So as of now, we have multiple subscriptions set up, but actually there are many subscriptions that we have to deal with, which for example, some will be global in the sense that we have to establish this, for example, if we have multiple Meshery components like operator, meshing, and broker also. So in the whole life cycle of Meshery UI, we have to be aware of the connection status. So that is something that is a global subscription in the sense that we have to start the subscription on the app startup, and it has to be alive till the app is shut down or it is closed. So I'm actually trying to divide, categorize the subscriptions into two parts. One that are concerned with only particular features or components, and the other which is which are global. So yeah, in the sense that the global subscription would be dispatched in a single action as I described before for the other server hydration. So that would be initialized, and yeah, we would still be getting the data, and we would hook up a reducer which would update the state based on the data that it is getting. And yeah, we can actually discuss more about this. There are some advantages and disadvantages of doing this, but I don't think it is worth doing it right now, because it would not be like it would not make much of a difference. So we'll just hook it up with we'll just try to implement it like that for now, and in the future, if it is something that is hindering our performance or hindering the user experience, then we can easily switch to different implementation. So yeah, this is basically the user flow that anyone will have to, like any Meshery user will undergo. So yeah, if anybody has any questions or any comments.
A quick comment from me, which is that, well, in a good way, the README for the new UI architecture is almost better than the README was for the current UI, like was for a year. So like we're already off to a much better start with setting up people for contributions and being organized. Now, the focus to date has been on, I don't know how to on the UI and not on the provider UI. So there's like 2 apps. Will we still land in a position with 2 apps as we have today?
Yes, actually, I haven't actually thought about integrating them into a single one. So if that is something that, but I don't think it would be an issue. So if you want, we can do it whenever we want to. But yeah,
Okay.
and honestly, like I don't see any difference between having integrating. One difference would be that the developer experience, in the sense that if we have it in the same app, then it's just one command that would get both provider and UI running. So other than that, yeah, we have to think if there are some advantages of doing that. But yeah, still, it's not a big deal to.
Gotcha.
Okay, so also one more thing, like if people who are willing to contribute to this, I have actually made a spreadsheet. I'm not able to find it right now, but I'll put it in the chat or in the Slack channel. So there we are keeping track of what are the components that has to be written and what are the tests that has to be written, all this stuff. So yeah, let me find it real quick.
Yeah, it might be the second one from the bottom. I don't know, the state management implementation.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So yeah, there are people working on this already, and yeah, as you can see, there are a lot more components that has to be built up, but we haven't got the time to write them up. But I'll do it real soon, and yeah, if they are interested in working, people can take any of these components and start writing them. They wouldn't be any different from what we have right now, but it would be much more refactored and much more reusable. So yeah, we can learn a lot of stuff by doing this really. So yeah, I really encourage anyone who's into UI and React to give it a try.
It's great. So by the way, maybe the last question for me, because we're over time, but there's 8 rows here, and in total, how many rows do you think? So this isn't the total number of rows, I suspect, for the different components, but
No, it isn't. I don't think I can give you an estimate, but around 25 to 30. If it's I don't like.
yeah,
I don't
sure.
know how good a guess it is, but
It's not 1,000.
Probably more. Probably more than 30.
yeah, let's see.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Cool. It's great. It's exciting.
Yeah,
It's also
that was the object from my side, guys.
Thank you, Nitish. That's all we have for today. I guess we'll meet next week. Have a great weekend, guys. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Okay, bye everyone.
good weekend. Bye.
Bye.